This is Fine Food and Entertaining with Chef Robbie. Very excited to be with you today, and we're gonna get cooking. Today we are doing a beautiful salad, has living lettuce, some roasted beets, fennel-infused goat cheese, apricot jam, and it's all plated on a beautiful slate platter. A lot of contrast in color, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to do it. Next, we have a beautiful skin that's crispy on a duck, and we're gonna show you actually how to take the breast off a duck itself, and we're gonna show you how to cook it perfectly in a sous vide and crisp it up in a pan. We're gonna pair that with mushrooms, some roasted potatoes, and some roasted fennel as well. Lastly, we're gonna do a Grand Marnier berry medley. We're gonna use some strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, and some raspberries. We're gonna pair that with some chantilly cream that's soft whipped by hand, as well as a sweet Riesling Sauvignon. Here we go, and we're gonna have some fun. So one thing when you're entertaining, you really want to think about flow. You have multiple things going on, whether it's reducing a sauce, roasting vegetables, and we want to make sure that we have everything done at the same time when we want dinner, when we want dessert, and when our guests show up for appetizers. So one of those things that we're going to do is we're going to roast our beets for our salad. We want them to roast, we want to be able to peel them, and then we want them to be cooled so we can put them on our salad. So, trick to doing beets and roasting them properly is we just want to take some little shears, some little kitchen shears, and that's the easiest way is just to kind of trim off the stems. We're gonna put it on a sheet tray with tin foil. Beets can stain a traditional sheet tray or pan because it has some really red juice. It's just easier cleanup when you use tin foil, and then when you're cooking them, it's gonna make sure that they steam, they're gonna cook faster, they're gonna be more moist, as well as the skin is gonna come off of them more easily. So, lots of tips and tricks when you're dealing with fine dining and entertaining, and we're gonna do and show you a lot of those tricks today. So when we're cooking beets, whether they're golden beets, whether they're red beets, we want to make sure that the size are all the same. So they cook evenly and they're not hard inside and one's soft inside and overcooked. So we have these beautiful beets. They are all generally the same size. Also, when you're plating, you want them to be the same size so when you slice them, they all look consistent. So what we're gonna do with cooking these beets, we're gonna add just a little bit of salt and pepper. I use kosher salt, just a regular kosher salt, and we're gonna use a little bit of olive oil. Not extra virgin olive oil, just regular olive oil. You wanna make sure that it is generally evenly coated, and then we're just going to fold them up, not in any particular way, just kind of fold them up so they're nice and sealed, nice and tight. We have it just on a little sheet tray to prevent any type of leaking of the tin foil, and it also transfers heat a lot better in the oven. So we have our beets wrapped, and we're gonna make sure that we put them in an oven, 425 degrees roast. Don't worry, 425 is not too high. It's gonna be something that cooks them through very well, gives them a great roasted flavor, and makes them nice and tender, a lot more quick than 350. So we have our beets, they're wrapped in tin foil, they're on a nice thick sheet tray so it transfers the heat very, very well. We have our monogram oven here. It is going to be a convection oven, and what we want is the full convection. So that fan is going full speed and it's cooking all around the product. What that's going to do is going to make sure that it is cooking evenly, cooking more efficiently, and cooking quicker. So we're going to open our oven. We have our nice racks here, and we're going to let them bake on convection for about 45 minutes. So our beets are in the convection oven. The product is being cooked from all around. It's cooking more efficiently, it's cooking quicker, and it's cooking to where it's gonna be a really nice roasted flavor. So our monogram oven is a beautiful, high quality oven that is gonna make sure that that temperature stays really nice and consistent. So one of the most common questions that I get is about convection cooking. So we're next to this monogram oven here, so it's a great time to talk about convection. So what convection actually does, it uses a heating element around the fan in the back of the oven to rush air all around what you're cooking. This is going to give you a more efficient cook, a quicker cook, and all around a better product. So today we're cooking on an induction cooktop. So Monogram makes this cooktop, and one tip that we want to do is always preheat your pans. When you're cooking, the last thing you want is to put something in a cold pan and have to wait for it to heat up. So what we want to do, just on low, is make sure that our pans are preheated. So we're going to learn a little bit of knife skills. We're going to learn how to cut a shallot. So in fine dining and entertaining, we always want to make sure that everything we cut, everything we serve is going to be nice and consistent, and it's cut well. So we are cutting a shallot here. I have my favorite knife, which is a Bob Kramer 5-inch utility knife. It's light enough, it is short enough to be able to really wield very well, and it's long enough so it's very versatile in anything you want to cut. So what we're going to do is we're always going to curl our fingers in whatever we're cutting to keep our fingers safe. We want to chop each end, and then we want to chop right down the middle. Now we're going to do that with both. We're not going to drop our knife because we want to be really consistent and really efficient. So now that I have them both cut, now I can peel the outside of the shallot. Okay, I'm just going to peel that really quick. If you need to go into the first layer, that's totally okay. Shallots are kind of in between a piece of garlic and a red onion. So they're not super powerful, but they still give that little bit of sweet flavor. So this is going to be added into our cherry sauce just to kind of give it a little pop of aromatics. We're going to have our fingers curled. Make sure that our fingers stay back. And when you get to this point, your fingers curl up, they get a little crowded. We're just going to make sure that we flip the onion over and finish it off. So to start our cherry sauce, we're going to take our shallots that we just cut along with some butter. This is a high butter fat butter called Pelugra. So it means that there's less milk solids, which is essentially water and butter, and there's more of that really good, delicious flavor that is in European style butter. So not only we're gonna add a little bit of butter, we're gonna add a little bit of olive oil, and then we're gonna add our shallots. So one thing that we wanna do is we wanna always be building flavor. And when we build flavor, part of that's gonna come from salting as we go. Now, if you just salt at the end, you're just gonna get a salty piece of food. Salty sauce, salty meat, potatoes, whatever it may be. But as you salt along the cooking process, you're gonna make sure that you're building that natural flavor within inside the product. So, with these shallots, we're just gonna stir them around. Our goal is to not get them caramelized. We want it to add a little bit of pop to the cherry sauce. And I'm on about medium-high heat. That's really all that you need. If you go any higher, you're actually gonna burn the butter. Now, while that's cooking, our shallots are cooking in those butter and that olive oil, we're gonna start our orange gastrique for our duck. And essentially a gastrique is something that's sweet, tangy, and sour. It goes really well with the duck because the duck is fatty with the skin, and it's also very crispy, so the sweet orange goes with it as well. Now, we have some fresh orange juice here. And when we're reducing, we want a wide-mouthed pot. Okay, the more wide the pot is, the more evaporation you'll get quicker. So we're gonna take this orange juice and we're gonna reduce it down about 3/4. So this is probably about 2 to 3 cups of fresh orange juice, and we're gonna take it down to about 1/4 of a cup. Now we wanna be a little bit mindful in the sense that we don't wanna burn the orange juice. It has a lot of sugar in it, but we wanna make sure that it's nice and reduced. So we want it at a simmer or a light boil instead of a rapid boil. Finally, we're gonna add some champagne vinegar, and that's gonna help make that sweet orange juice nice and tart. We're gonna go back to our cherry sauce. Our shallots are starting to caramelize, get a little bit brown, which is exactly what we want. Now, we're gonna add in a frozen cherry. Frozen fruit is actually a very good alternative to fresh fruit because they pick it at its peak ripeness. With the picking it at its peak ripeness, it's very, very sweet. It's very well developed in flavor. And when we're using it in a sauce, it's gonna be something that's a better product than a fresh cherry. And you don't have to pit it, which is also a plus. Along with our frozen cherries, we're gonna add some of our cherry jam. And this is just a tart cherry jam. It gives it some body, it gives it some flavor, and we're just gonna let that marinate and cook. So, I have a really cool trick that I think you'll really like. So, everybody talks about a champagne vinaigrette. But really, there's no champagne in the actual vinaigrette. It's just champagne vinegar. But my champagne vinaigrette actually does have champagne in it. So here's a little bit about what we do. We're gonna reduce down a whole bottle of champagne, and we're gonna reduce it down to about 3 tablespoons or so, 4 tablespoons. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna give us a really, really nice, well-rounded flavor when it comes to making a champagne vinaigrette. So we're gonna be on a medium high. We have a nice wide sauce pot because we wanna reduce this as quick as possible. So we're using a dry white wine. We don't wanna use a sweet because it's gonna add too much sweetness to the vinaigrette, but we're gonna make sure that it is a kind of medium quality champagne in the sense that since we're reducing it down, it's gonna consolidate that flavor, and we want that consolidated flavor to make sure that it's going to add a lot to our vinaigrette. Body, flavor, acidity, and make it a really well-rounded vinaigrette. Okay, so also our cherry sauce is nice and reduced, so you can see how it's getting nice and thick. This is to the point where we add our port wine, okay? So this is actually a Spanish port wine. It's not an Austrian port wine. So it's just a little bit more aromatic, which I like because it adds a lot to the duck. We want to make sure that this is on high heat. When we're cooking and reducing, we want to bring this up to heat as quick as possible. It's okay to bring it to a simmer on high heat as long as you're stirring the bottom and it's not burning at the bottom. We want to make sure that once we bring it up, we of course lower the heat to make sure that it doesn't burn or boil over. So the last thing that we're going to do for our salad is the fennel that is roasted, as well as the pickled kumquats. So if you've never had a kumquat before, it's really a special treat. It is very sour, but also has a really nice, sweet, tender flavor. Now we're gonna accentuate that flavor with some champagne white wine vinegar. And we're just gonna do a quick pickle. So a quick pickle is really something you can do with anything, any fruit, vegetables, and we're gonna just heat up some vinegar. We're gonna add in a little bit of salt. Don't want too much, but we just kind of want to bring out that flavor. And lastly, we're going to make sure that it's kind of sweet. So you can add honey, you can add maple syrup, you can add straight up sugar. We're actually using honey. I love to use alternative sugars. I very rarely use a white sugar or a brown sugar unless we're baking or it's called for. So I want the sweetener to add more than just sweetness. So with honey, you add a very nice honey flavor that is very distinct. Maple syrup, the same thing. Also, from a health standpoint, maple syrup and honey are much better for you. So we're just gonna heat this up. We want it to heat up warm, even almost to a boil. We have our kumquats that are cut in half, and they're just gonna kind of soak in our liquid of honey, white wine vinegar, as well as a little bit of salt. You can see that our orange juice has reduced by half, which is great. Our cherry sauce is boiling lightly, and that's gonna reduce. And we're going to, since it has been reduced a little bit, we're gonna add in some of the final options for the cherry sauce. That's gonna be dried cherries. So when you're building a sauce, whether that's a peppercorn sauce or a cherry sauce, we wanna make sure that it has as much cherry, as much peppercorn as you can possibly get. That means mixing all types of flavors, all types of textures of the pepper, or all types of textures of the cherry. So we have all different forms. We have port wine that's very rich, that's kind of, reminiscent of cherry. We have frozen cherries that are like fresh cherries. We're gonna add in dried cherries, which adds that really jammy flavor. We actually had jam in and of itself that we put in. And then finally, this is a secret ingredient. So all y'all listen up at home. This is a caramelized onion jam, okay? So this caramelized onion jam is gonna add that wow factor to your cherry sauce. It's not gonna be super oniony, it's not gonna be very sweet, it's just gonna add that lasting flavor in your mouth that's really gonna impress your guests when you're entertaining. So if you've never tasted fennel before, this is fennel. You really only use this white bulb part, and it's also called anise. So this is our fennel. We're using the bulb, and how we're gonna cut it is we're gonna trim the bottom of it. We're gonna put it on the flat surface so it's really nice and safe. We're gonna bisect it, and then really the only thing you have to cut out of the fennel is there is a small portion of a very hard core to it, and we wanna notch that out. And when you notch it out, you just wanna cut it at a diagonal, and then it just kinda pulls out. The rest you can use, and we're gonna cut it nice and thin, toss it in a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, and it's gonna go in the oven. We wanna make sure that it's not super soft. We want a little bit of a bite to it, but I like to put it in a really hot oven so it can even char a little bit, because I really like that charred flavor with the fennel. It's kind of crunchy, charry, and really offers a nice bitterness, texture, and flavor to the actual salad. With a salad or any type of ingredient, you don't have to make it super complicated. Add a whole bunch of spices, herbs, a lot to the fennel. So, and that kind of goes with any product. It's cooking it properly, making sure that you have a few accompaniments and a few flavors that go well with the dish, but it's simple in and of itself. So for this, we're just gonna take a little bit of salt and pepper because we want to salt along the way, a little bit of regular olive oil, and we're gonna finish it with our pepper. We're gonna turn off our orange juice. As you can see, it is going to be nice and reduced, kind of down to a syrup. We're gonna turn off our kumquats because that's boiling. Add a little pepper to our fennel, so it's ready to go in the oven. Once again, we're using convection. We're roasting the fennel and making sure that it's nice and well cooked, but still crispy on the inside. Next, we're gonna do some baby potatoes. So I actually went to Central Market and I hand-picked these potatoes. They're all kind of similar sizes, which means that they're gonna cook very, very consistently, which is what we want. We don't want big raw potatoes and then mushy small potatoes. So we have red potatoes, purple potatoes, which are really nice and creamy. Adds a lot of flavor and color to the dish. Everybody loves garlic, okay? So we're just gonna add just a little bit of garlic. And then we're gonna add those shallots as well. So how we're gonna cook these, we have the shallots, the garlic, the potatoes, a little bit of olive oil. This is just regular olive oil, not extra virgin, anything like that. We're gonna salt them, and we're actually gonna very liberally salt them. Potatoes have a lot of starch in them, so they actually need a lot of salt. And we're just gonna give them a toss. Monogram oven, convection with that fan, cooking all around the product. They're gonna be really nice, roasty, and crispy by the time we take them out. We're at our Monogram 48-inch range and convection oven. We're gonna open it up. We have the telescopic racks that make sure that we can put our product right on the sheet tray and push it right back in. One thing that we do have, just like our pans, we have our sheet trays preheated. So when we're putting down our potatoes, we don't have to wait for our sheet tray to preheat. We are already cooking, we are already rocking and rolling because that sheet tray is hot. Now with the fennel, we can do the same thing. There's gonna be two things that this does. Not only is it going to cook faster, but it's also gonna give us a better roast and a better final product. We're gonna slide that rack right in, give it about 20-30 minutes, and it's gonna be delicious, roasty, and ready for our salad. So we're doing duck today, and sometimes fresh duck is hard to find. So what we did is we got a frozen whole duck, thawed it, and we're gonna show you how to break it down. Now, duck is an amazing bird who flies thousands of miles just to escape the cold. Down here in Texas, we might do the same thing. So with our bird, we wanna make sure that we take off the breast and get as much meat as possible. Duck is not a cheap meat, so I'm gonna show you exactly how to do this. You need a very sharp knife, and the reason why is because there's a lot of fat, thick skin that you're gonna need to cut through. So I'm using a Bob Kramer slicing knife. And when you're cutting meat, you never wanna use short little strokes. You wanna make sure that you use big, long strokes. So there's a natural breastbone right here down the middle, and that's what's gonna split the breast in two. Also, this is the arm, and we wanna make sure that we cut around that. So that's kind of our general structure that we're going to do. Cut down on the breast, around the arm, and take it off. So we're gonna take from the back of the knife to the front, and we're gonna split the breast down the middle. Now, one thing about meat, whether that is a pig or a cow or a chicken, the meat is going to tell you exactly where to go if you just go slow enough and you are able to kind of feel where you go. So we're going to continue to work the meat with our knife, and you wanna really push on that bone that is gonna take that breast off, because once again, duck is not cheap, and we wanna make sure that we get as much meat as possible. So you always wanna lift up the actual meat, and that'll show you exactly where to go. Cut around these bones. You're gonna cut through the skin at the end, right here. And as you can see, we already have most of the breast that's off, just with a few cuts. So don't be intimidated if you can't find duck and you need to get a whole duck. You just rewatch this video over and over and over, and then you can learn how to take the breast off the duck. So we are going to continue to follow the duck breast around the bone. So we have the breast off the skin and the bone. We're gonna kind of take this tail piece and start to work this completely off the bird. So really, this is the only thing that's holding the breast on the duck, okay? And if you see it from the other side, this portion right here, and it gives you a natural line. If you can see this, see how it gives you a natural line right here from where the thick fat ends and the thin skin starts. The bird and the meat is telling you exactly where to cut, okay? So what that means, I'll show you exactly how to do it. Use big long strokes to cut through. We're gonna cut right along that line, okay? And there's just a little bit holding it, and you have a perfect duck breast. So there's a few tricks to cooking duck. I love it, and it's one of my favorites because it's really hard to get perfectly cooked duck. Now, you either get a crispy skin and an overcooked meat, or you get a perfect cooked meat and a soggy skin. So what we're going to do is we're gonna sous vide the duck, which renders the fat in the skin, and then we're gonna finish it in the pan to make that crispy skin. Now, in order to do that, we need to do a few different things. We need to score the skin, just the fat in the skin, with a knife. What that's gonna do, that's gonna allow the fat to start to render out of the duck, okay? So it gives a place for the fat to go and to drip out. So we're gonna do that on both sides. Try not to cut into the meat, so just a very light hand. Okay, you almost just set the knife on the duck, nice and scored. We're gonna salt it, okay? No pepper. I'm not a huge fan of pepper on duck. Salt both sides, okay? Nice and liberally. We're gonna add it into our sous vide bag. Okay, then we're gonna vacuum seal it after that. Now, duck doesn't need a whole lot of accompaniments to it as far as flavor. I put a little bit of thyme and some of that really nice butter. And that is our duck. So we're ready to check everything in our oven. We're gonna pull out our smooth glide racks. Our beets are up first. Okay, so we're gonna unwrap them, grab these tweezers. And basically what we want is we want them to be tender. So we're just gonna stick the tweezers in. They come out easily. So our beets are ready for our salad. We're just gonna let them cool on this griddle. One tip, if you need something to cool faster, you can put it on a metal surface or a stone surface and it cools down a lot faster, especially if it's on a sheet tray. Next, we have our roasted potatoes and our fennel. So our fennel looks great. It's a little bit brown, which is exactly what we want, but it's still tender but crisp at the same time. Lastly, we have our potatoes. Our potatoes are nice and soft. Our shallots are caramelized and brown, and this is exactly what we want. Our garlic is not burnt. And if anyone caught it, I did not chop or slice my garlic. Some people think that's very weird. I do it on purpose because I don't like a really intense garlic flavor. The reason why I use whole garlic is you get a much more well-rounded garlic flavor that's sweet, adds aromatic to your potatoes, but doesn't burn at the same time. Chopped garlic, sliced garlic, burns very, very easily. I almost never use those forms. I always use the whole garlic. And the great thing is, it's roasty, so you can eat it. So I'm gonna pull out our Monogram Smooth Glide racks. We have our roasted fennel that's nice and brown. It's crisp and soft, but not overcooked. Finally, we have our potatoes. Our potatoes are really nicely cooked. They're soft, but not mushy. Our onions and our shallots are very nice and cooked. They're brown, they're crispy, and our garlic is crispy and delicious as well. Now, if you notice, I used whole garlic. The whole garlic is meant for a reason, and that reason is if you use chopped garlic or sliced garlic, it's something that it might burn. Garlic burns very easily. With the whole garlic, it does not burn. It gives you that very nice, holistic garlic flavor. And the best thing is, you can eat it too. So we're gonna finish up our salad. The few things we have left to do is to cut our pears, our tomatoes, make our vinaigrette, and peel our beets. So I have two types of pears. And these pears, I'm just going to slice each side off, okay? They're in between a ripe pear and a non-ripe pear. So they're still firm, but they're a little bit soft at the same time. I don't want them super soft and falling apart and super sweet. I want them a little bit bitter, a little bit tart, so it goes really well with the acidity and the sweetness of the salad. So I just cut the sides off. I'm gonna cut those sides in half to give us some really nice shape to them. I'm gonna do that same thing with the green pear. And this green pear is beautiful because it gives you this nice red side as well. So it adds some really nice color. Okay, so I'm gonna cut those and they will brown really fast. Okay, so the only way to prevent pears from browning is to put some type of acid on them. That could be lemon juice, that could be vinegar, whatever it may be. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a little quick marinade. So we're going to do some champagne vinegar. We're going to do a little bit of orange blossom honey. Now this is a awesome honey. It's from Savannah Bee Company, and I got it from Central Market. I get all my honey and all my vinegars from Central Market just because they have some really fun and unique things. So, a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of honey, and they're just gonna kind of chill out there until we're ready to do our salad. Next thing is we have an heirloom tomato. So heirloom tomatoes come in all different colors. They come in red, they come in green, yellow, striped, purple, and they have really great flavor. So heirloom tomatoes are actually a very natural tomato, so they have that very tomatoey flavor. They're not watery, they are really delicious, and they have a great flavor, a great look, and a great color to them. So with the tomato, we want to slice it really nice and thin, probably 1/4 inch, because that's what's going to go on our salad. So we don't want it to be too big of a bite with the tomato, so we're going to slice it nice and thin, about 1/4 inch. So that's about all we need from that tomato. As you can see, really nice, bright and yellow. We have this green tiger stripe, and we're just going to do a few slices of this green tiger stripe. So it adds some really nice contrast to our yellow tomato. So if you can see right here, really beautiful setup, adds color, texture, and flavor to our salad. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna peel our beets. So our beets are nice and roasted, they're soft, but they're not mushy, okay? We wanna make sure that we peel them hot. If you don't peel them hot, it's something where they're not gonna peel. So you take a paper towel, that's the trick. You really have a hard time doing it if you don't have a paper towel. So we're gonna have these red beets. We're gonna peel one more just for good measure. So with a paper towel, it's really super easy. We're gonna take off all the black. It's just the peel. And then so they cool down, we're gonna cut off the end. And we're gonna slice our beet as well, okay? We wanna make sure it's really nice and consistent. In fine dining, sometimes you have to waste a little bit of the ends or a little bit of the product to make sure that you get it perfectly shaped. And with this, we're cutting off the top and we're just using kind of the middle. So it looks really nice. Those beets are gonna cool down. That's gonna be part of our salad. The last thing that we're gonna do is our vinaigrette. So with our vinaigrette, it consists of a few components. Mustard is one of them. Easiest way to do a vinaigrette is in a mason jar. A lot of times you'll see whisk and a bowl and emulsifying the oil. Really, you put it all in the mason jar and you give it a shake and you're good to go. So we have some whole grain mustard. We're gonna use our champagne vinegar. And traditionally, it is a 1/3 vinegar and the rest oil. With ours, we want it to be a little bit acidic. It's got beets in it, so we want it to be a touch acidic, and we're using a very, very good olive oil from Central Market. So a lot of flavor. This is an extra virgin olive oil, and you always want to use an extra virgin olive oil when it comes to cold applications. Never cook with this high quality of an extra virgin olive oil. You always want to use a canola oil or a regular olive oil, a light olive oil, something along that lines. So we're gonna add in our oil, which that's about good. We're gonna add in a lot of salt. So oil takes quite a bit of salt to season properly. And then we're gonna add in some of our orange blossom honey. And what that's gonna do is just gonna kind of smooth out the vinegar flavor that is inside our vinaigrette. A little bit of a shake. And if you're using good olive oil and really good vinegar, you really have a high quality vinaigrette, because those are the two biggest main components. If you're using a lesser quality, you might have to add in herbs or spices, but with a quality vinegar and a quality oil, it's gonna be something where you're on point every single time. It's pretty good. Okay, so when I'm doing private dinners, this is my guest's favorite part, hands down, to watch. So, plating is all about texture, height, and color variation. So we have a lot of different ingredients here on our salad. So kind of like I spoke about earlier in the show, we have a lot of ingredients that don't have a lot of accompaniments in them, so not a lot of spices, herbs, are just seasoned well, cooked well, but they all go together in one beautiful salad. So plate choice is key. So we're using this beautiful black slate that is gonna add a lot of contrast to the colors that we have going on. So I always plate the lettuce last. And that reason is because when you dress the lettuce, you're under the time clock, okay? You don't want your lettuce to get soggy, and it's something where I like to use living lettuce, like you see here. This is a local living lettuce from Central Market that's actually grown in store. So it's living, it's super fresh as you can get it, but it's very tender and it can get very soggy very fast. So we want to do that last. So how we're going to start off is we're going to take our cheese. It's a soft goat cheese, and I have a brush. And when you're plating, don't try to plate too perfect, right? I mean, too perfect of things just don't look good. They look kind of weird. Okay, so we're just gonna paint this cheese right on the plate just with a regular brush. We have some apricot jam that's gonna go really well with the cheese. Okay, we're gonna do a 3 swooper situation. And when you're doing a swoop, it's really important to just go for it, okay? You can't stop halfway through or it looks really weird. So we're gonna take it from the back and go straight forward, okay? Back, straight forward, and that gives us that nice swoop. Next thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna start to place our main components. So we have this roasted fennel. And you kind of want to start with corners in general. So we're going to do that, and then we want to think about what's going to be a good color variation to this fennel. The fennel's kind of white, so we need something a little bit brighter. Okay, so these apricots on the side, they're sweet, we pickled them, they're soft, and they're going to go great with this fennel. Next thing we're gonna do is we have some pears, and I'm just gonna put one with the cut side up and one with the cut side down, especially since the cut side up is going to be really nice and juicy, and then the cut side down is gonna have this really nice color to it. So we have that. The apples give it a lot of great texture. So we're gonna kinda put that on the other side. I just like to stack it a little abstractly. And then we have our honeycomb. I really like to put our honeycomb on the pears. Even though we already have some honey on the pears. So Honeycomb is gonna add a lot of flavor, a lot of texture. You can eat the wax. It's edible and very delicious. After that, we are going to add some pistachio. So pistachio I love because it adds texture and it adds that green color, which is really, really nice. Now with the apples, we have these cherries. These are freeze-dried cherries. So what's cool about these is you can crunch them in your hands. See, we're not in the perfect round. Okay, a lot of cool color going on. And then we have some fennel pollen that we're gonna put on each edge. And then finally we have our lettuce. So we're just gonna tear a little bit of lettuce off. That's gonna go in the other corner. Once again, just how we talked about, we wanna make sure we have a nice height to our lettuce. So we kinda stack it up, a nice green side up, so we have some really nice height. And then we don't wanna overwhelm our lettuce. We're gonna take this beautiful champagne vinaigrette that we added our reduced champagne into at the end. We're just gonna kind of drizzle a little bit. A little bit can go on the fennel. So we're gonna place our lettuce. We put a little bit of the vinaigrette over top. And finally, we're gonna finish with our roasted beets. Okay, we're just gonna kind of shingle them along the side here. And that is gonna be something that gets our little bit of goat cheese on the side, as well as a drizzle of our vinaigrette. And that is our salad. All right, so we're gonna move on to our duck. So when we're doing duck, we wanna make sure that the skin is very, very dry. If the skin is not dry, it's not going to crisp, it's just gonna steam. So any type of meat, whether it's raw meat or cooked meat, we wanna make sure the whole thing is dry so it will cook evenly, it'll crisp, get some really nice browning, and then it'll have some nice crispy texture as well. So we're gonna do it in this nice heavy saute pan. So we're using a DeMeyer saute pan, it's a 5-ply, so it can really hold the heat. We're just using a little bit of olive oil because there's a lot of fat in the duck. And we're using about a medium-high heat. We want this skin to render and cook quickly so it does not overcook the meat of the duck. Crispy skin, perfectly cooked duck. Now as our duck cooks, we're gonna do our mushrooms. These are very special mushrooms. We have a chanterelle mushroom, and then we have a king mushroom. So with our king mushroom, we scored it, so it's gonna add this really nice look to our mushroom. So we have a medium-high heat, plenty of oil. Mushrooms suck up a lot of oil, so we wanna make sure that there's more than enough to cook the mushroom. We're almost kind of frying the mushroom a little bit, and then we're gonna finish it with butter at the very end. So mushrooms are one of those things that you really don't need a lot of, herbs or pepper or spices or anything like that. They're just really good on their own. So chanterelles are about $60 to $70 a pound. And king mushrooms, which are these long mushrooms, are going to be $30 a pound. So anything you're paying a premium price for, you want to make sure that you are really utilizing the mushroom, the natural flavor in the mushroom, and not covering it up with something else. So our duck looks great. We have our orange sauce, our cherry sauce, our potatoes all ready. This duck is looking beautiful. So you can tell with the duck, or really anything that you're cooking, the edges start to get really nice and brown. So that's how you know if something's done or not. You know, when the edges start to get brown, you want to take a look, not before that, because you don't want to lift up the skin, lift up the meat. As soon as you lift it up, it breaks the contact of the pan, and it's not going to give you a good sear anymore. Okay, so we have this on medium-high heat. We're making sure the skin is in really nice contact. We have our mushrooms, and with our mushrooms, we really don't want to cook them until they're mushy. So that's about good. They're really nice and crispy. You can see the pattern kind of coming out, and this monogram induction, you can tell how hot it is. Okay, so it responds really well to heat, and then it cools down very quickly as well. I turned off the heat, and it's gonna stop cooking from there. So our duck looks beautiful. Really nice crispy skin, which is exactly what we want. Okay, crispy skin, perfectly cooked duck. And then as far as our mushrooms, I'm gonna add in our king mushrooms on our plate. So I'm just draining the oil off of them. This is just plain, regular canola oil. So we were cooking on high heat. We want that kind of char on our mushroom because it's gonna add a little bit of that flavor. A chanterelle is very earthy in and of itself, kind of an earthy, nutty mushroom. It's actually my favorite mushroom of all the mushrooms. So we're gonna do a little large flake sea salt, touch of butter, let that melt on our mushrooms. All right, so it is time to plate our duck. Favorite dish of the whole show. So we have this beautiful Epicurean cutting board. We have it flipped over, so the meat run is along the cutting board. So if we have any type of juices from the duck, it rolls right into the meat board and not onto our counter, which is really important. I freshly honed my knife. We want a really nice sharp knife to cut through that skin and make sure that we have nice clean cuts. I always like to cut my duck at an angle, okay? So you want to slice and try to keep it all together. Wow, this looks amazing. So as you see, crispy skin, beautiful medium rare inside. So that's going to be the main part of a duck. I'm just taking some time, melting this butter, kind of basting our mushrooms just a little bit to get that thyme flavor in our mushrooms. It's kind of like a little brush. So we're gonna do some swoops and swishes. So we're gonna start with our orange juice, Gastrique, orange Gastrique. So you see how kind of nice and thick it is. So we're gonna go right along each side, all the way down the plate. And then we're gonna go the other side with our cherry sauce. On the side. Next thing is our potatoes. We're just going to kind of put a few with these garlic and all the delicious things. So we have our garlic, we have our shallot, and then finally we have our duck. I'm going to kind of plate this beautiful centerpiece. Lay it out a little bit over the sauces. In the middle, I found these beautiful figs at Central Market, which go so well with duck. And then to top it all off, we have our king mushrooms that have that really nice scored pattern on them. Some chanterelles. You don't want to put too many on because you don't want to overwhelm the plate. And then finally, little bit of green. So this is micro arugula. And there is a trick to microgreens. Okay, you want to kind of pull them apart, make them really nice and fluffy so they can have some nice height to them. And we're going to put that right on top. So that is our duck dish with crispy mushrooms, our roasted potatoes, our orange Gastrique, port wine cherry sauce, and figs. All right, so for our dessert, we're making a sweet Riesling Sabayon. So essentially a Sabayon is a sweet Riesling wine custard. So we're taking egg yolks, we're whisking them over hot water until they get to the point of being ribbons is what they call it. So basically you lift it up and it should stream into a ribbon into one piece. So once you have the egg yolk cooked, we're gonna add a little bit of Riesling. And it's this really delicious custard. And I am letting it sit in a water bath. And the water bath is allowing it to not cook directly on heat. So it allows it to cook a lot more gently than it normally would. So you're supposed to serve the Sabayon nice and warm. So you can see it, it's kind of nice and thick, kind of custardy. That's exactly kind of how we want it. So we're only serving one glass, only takes a little bit of Sabayon. We're gonna stop the cooking just a touch with a little bit more wine. Okay, give it a stir. And then we have a little bit of whipped cream, whipping very lightly. So you wanna be careful when you're whipping the cream that it doesn't curdle. So I really like the whipped cream to be nice and kind of soft. Okay, I don't like it to be kind of really hard and like standing up on itself, especially in a situation, berry situation like this. So I'm then gonna add my berries. I'm gonna add them in kind of hardiness first so they don't all squish together. So I'm gonna add my strawberries, little blackberries, some blueberries, and then my raspberries. We're gonna add that Grand Marnier, just a little bit, maybe just a touch more. We're gonna add just very small amount of sugar, tiny bit of salt, and then we're just gonna coat the berries with the Grand Marnier, and that's really all we're looking for. So how to assemble this? I like to put it in this cool little clear glass. We have a lot of really nice components, and it's gonna make it really pretty cool looking when we put it all together. The whipped cream, the Sabayon are all going to drip down in the bottom of the glass. I might add just a little bit of Grand Marnier at the bottom of the glass. It's kind of like berry dessert shot all in one. We're gonna add our Sabayon. Finally, a little bit of whipped cream. And then the very last thing that we're gonna do, we have some fresh maple syrup that we're just gonna pour a little fresh maple syrup in it. So, this is our dessert. It's beautiful. Has this really nice kind of Grand Marnier, maple, creamy, and then tartness and sweetness with the berries. And it's just a really great finish to a delicious dinner. So, there's always a team behind the chef. I want to thank Factory Billiard Stores for letting us use their beautiful showroom, their appliances. I want to thank Monogram for letting us use their appliances as well and let us cook on such a beautiful piece of equipment. I want to thank Fortessa for supplying the glasses, the plates, and Epicurean cutting boards for giving us these beautiful cutting boards, as well as Zwilling, who supplies the pots and pans, DeMeyer, the Bob Kramer knives, and finally, my team who makes this all possible. Thank you, viewers, for allowing me to cook with you, share a few things, share some tips, and the love that I have for food and entertaining. Have a great night.